So hello to everybody watching in the present or in the future on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else. And welcome very much to the series, What Makes Our Inner Work Work? And we're together for part 27 of this show. And I chose to call this I don't know if to call it a show exactly is right, but I chose to call this meeting Tsunamis and Babies. And anyone who stays here will soon realize why. So this series is really about all sorts of things that I found have been deeply relevant for my personal journey. Now, nobody's life's perfect, and it's not even supposed to be perfect. And so I'm not talking about that, but I am talking from personal experience of how do we do our work in such a way that step by step, we reach a life that is profound, that feels meaningful, that is lived in relatively high frequency, that is good for us and good for others, and so on and so forth. What is required in order for that to happen? And I find that one of the things I'm supposed to teach and demonstrate is how to do just that. Now, it's work, and quite a lot of work, which we all need, but the work can be fun, and it can be joyful, and of course it can be very, very helpful. So when we see that things are beginning to move, and perhaps we have one less problem, or one thing that was really difficult for us has been worked through, we get empowered and more committed to do more work, hopefully. The thing is, and I see it both with myself, even today sometimes, and also with my students along the years. And the thing is that parts of our way can be extremely difficult. And how we go through difficulty on our path is one of the vital things to learn. So this part has to do with that and with trusting our process. And you will see in a moment what sort of trust it can be sometimes. So before I begin, I just really want to say again, very, very clearly, that the work is really worth it. But you have to do it in a way that actually works, because many people think they're working and aren't really working. They can spend tons of money and even time on all sorts of things that just don't really give them that much. But it's very easy to fool ourselves that we are actually doing the work. Okay, so tsunamis and babies. In mid-2005, I had a few tsunami dreams. And by then, I was already familiar with this motif of the tsunami because I encountered it earlier. One of these tsunami dreams, for example, I was somewhere near the beach, naturally, and I was running away from a tsunami, and I was leading a few people that I knew up a tower. It was quite a dilapidated tower. And the idea was, of course, to get as high as possible. And I was a bit irritated by the slowness of some of the people who were following me up the stairs. It seemed to me that they weren't really understanding the seriousness of the situation. Or perhaps I was exaggerating the danger. No one was hurt in that dream, and apart from getting their feet wet or something like that. And but whatever happened with the other people, what was really important to me in this dream was that it seemed to hint that new things, and possibly not very easy things, were heading towards me from the unconscious. Now, things like that are usually clearer when we look back at them. It's a bit more difficult to understand what's going on as we're going through things, through a process, step by faltering step. At the same month or so, maybe even a few days later, I also dreamt of giving birth to a baby. And giving birth is also, for me, a recurring theme. And in that dream, the process of giving birth to this tiny little baby was very quick, and it was completely painless. But after the baby arrived so effortlessly, the placenta didn't come out. It wasn't expelled. And I was really puzzled by it. So I sat down to do my work. And one of the first things I decided in this case was to invite the baby from the dream and to dialogue with it. So I'm going to read you a few things that happened during this time when I was working with myself in my journal. So I invite the baby, and the baby said the following things. I'm reading it now from my journal. I am a new thing in your life. I'm a miracle. I look small, but have enormous soul power. You don't need to fear me, but you do. Perhaps I am a bit frightening, actually. So far, you managed to suppress my power to some extent. You are slowly shedding off more of your identification with being nice. I am a giant in a tiny body, just as you are a giant in a small body. Your personality is too small for your soul and powers. Stop worrying. I'm a baby with superpowers. If you become a real warrior, you can help yourself and others on a much higher level. You must sacrifice some of your niceness for your power. You can see that I am powerful, yet vulnerable as a baby. But mostly, I am powerful. So, wow, I didn't expect that. We don't really usually think of a baby in a dream or not in a dream as something so powerful and so wise, telling me that I need to learn how to be more of a warrior and less nice. Not that I was always nice, but it's a matter of a balance. I needed to be even less nice and more of a warrior and more powerful in order, as the baby said, to help people on a higher level. I was already a teacher. I already wrote my book about voice dialogue. It didn't come out yet, but it was about to be published in the following year. So anyway, it was becoming clearer that I was required to expel, like the placenta perhaps, some of my tendency to be nice. Perhaps something like to be, if we're talking about placentas, which have to do with mothers, perhaps like being a good girl to my mother or something like that. Perhaps being less the polite girl that has been socialized to be the keeper of harmony and peace at the expense of her empowerment and her depth, her profundity. So it seemed that I needed to accept being imperfect more deeply, and I needed to become more of a warrior. That was very interesting. And I then spoke with a placenta from the dream. So yes, if we learn how to do it, we can talk with all the elements in a dream. And this is what the placenta said to me. I am a strange, temporary organ. Once I've done my job of protecting and nourishing the baby, I'm either thrown away or eaten in some cultures, but I'm not necessary anymore. This is how you should release everything within you that is not required anymore. So I continued thinking about the birth and the tsunami dreams I had. And I also noticed that although these experiences, both the birth and the tsunami, could be sometimes difficult, painful, even sometimes dangerous experiences, I wasn't hurt in the dreams, nor was anybody else hurt. And then I turned to the other dream, the dream of the tsunami, and I spoke with it. And this is what the tsunami said. I am a giant wave that can cause devastation. I wash everything, destroying everything on my path. I cannot be stopped, and I can be dangerous. But in your soul, I come to clear the way for something new. I am like a flood, destroying everything so a new society can be built. You don't need to run away. Let yourself be cleansed by me. Again, quite surprising for me at the time. And then I wrote, the placenta protects, but also separates. It's an extension of the mother. And here the placenta does not release after the birth of the baby. There is something rigid that does not allow the flow to resume. And I was looking inwards and writing the following. The sense of my center is weaker than it was before, and sometimes it disappears. What is the self trying to tell me? And the self answered, I am always here, so you don't need to worry. I do not disappear. I asked it, but what should I do to experience you again, to quench my thirst, to live? I put this question out, and I was willing and open to hear what would come and to see what I would experience, not knowing in advance what might happen. So I was surrendering to a process. The first thing that came up as I read in my journal was that I scanned the process I went through in the previous years. So much has happened these past few years. I went through the alchemical process, the rite of passage, the initiation. I stayed there being, being with it all. I learned more patience, resilience, faith, perseverance, humility, not knowing. I learned to require less appreciation from others. I'm learning to be less nice. There is still work to do. I am learning the art of the warrior. There is still much to learn. Lately, there is less flow, as if the central gate valve or tap is closed more often than not. Perhaps it's natural for the connection to myself to expand and contract sometimes. If you lose the connection, you enter another round of work and another round of study. When the self shuts down, it becomes a wound. I need to go down a burrow, spiraling down dark, narrow steps into the bowels of the earth. Finally, I find a door to a room. I open it. There is a golden carpet and a sense of mystery and suspense in the air. The golden carpet is flooded with water to my ankles. The carpet is the only source of light. The water flows out of the room through a canal or a dark sled. I sit and slide, spiraling down. There is a slight feeling of excitement and dizziness, and I am then shot into outer space. So you see, as I was writing this, I was experiencing this. This was what was coming up. I was not really thinking about it, imagining it, and then writing it down. It was just welling up from my unconscious. Okay? So I sit and slide, spiraling down. There's a slight feeling of excitement and dizziness, and I'm shot into outer space. I'm floating between the stars, then drop down towards Earth. I'm on a tip of a mountain. Birds are eating my flesh. I surrender with rapture to the cleaning of my bones. I feel a breeze on the back of my neck. Some kind of spiritual garment is taken off me like a transparent night cloak. My bones are scattered all over the valleys of this remote area of tall mountains. Each bone sprouts into a plant, and there is a sudden crazy growth of trees. But this only happens after the bones wait for enough time, patiently, quietly, in the earth or on it, until the right rains and conditions arrive. Meanwhile, the bones seemingly sleep and live a secret life, inwardly, a life no one can see. Once the plants grow, there are fruits, and people come to eat and nourish themselves. Because these are the first fruits to grow in this arid place. The fruits are magical. They create magic in many people. Yet one needs to be careful not to want to be too important, not to boast, show off. But one must not fear that either. It is nothing but an age-old automatic mechanism that one must work on with patience and humor. Now, I was reading this again, perhaps for the first time since it was experienced, or at least for a very long time. It was written 16 years ago. And I notice how the need to trust deeply at times of contraction and source disconnection is still sometimes relevant to remember even today for me. As I said at the beginning, I went into this work that I just read a part of to you after a time where I was feeling contracted, I was feeling less alive, I was feeling less energy moving through me, things like that. And it worried me. I wanted the aliveness back. I wanted the movement back. I wanted the joy of life back. And I didn't feel a lot of it at that point. And this is one of the scary things that we can often experience on our way, because a while before that, I was feeling much, much better. I was feeling wonderful. And then suddenly something happens and you feel that it's as if you're losing it. You're losing what you've gained. But all these dreams and the experience of this vision that I read to you have to do with the willingness, our willingness to let go of the placenta, allow the tsunami to wash over you and take with it what needs to be taken, right? And in the vision, there was the same idea of surrendering to the birds that were eating my flesh. I know it can sound pretty horrible, but it was a beautiful experience for me. You know, it's just allowing the old to be released, everything that isn't necessary. And through that, you remember the plants that suddenly grew out of the bones, the newness, the freshness, that everything can start again afresh. A new cycle can begin. And also, if you recall, both the baby, surprisingly, said that I needed to be less nice and to learn how to be more of a warrior. And immediately after, as I was doing the work, in this vision, it was a vision that required some courage, I would say. No, it's not something that usually we rush to experience, okay? Becoming bones spread around the hills and valleys with birds eating us, okay? So that was already part of growing into being more of a warrior. So, and the whole thing, you know, being a warrior has nothing to do with being at war, really, or being aggressive or killing people. We're not talking about that. We're talking about being brave, being courageous, being committed to yourself, not being too easy on yourself in a way, not being, not sleeping your life away. For example, being really, really there for yourself is part of being a warrior, and going through what needs to be gone through, whatever it is. Okay. So in this case, one of the things was that I was going through a contraction, and being a warrior was also not to panic. Okay. To say, okay, something's going on. I don't really know what it is, but I'll be with it. I'll be with it. I'll be with it. I won't panic. And if I do, I won't panic because I'm panicking. If you see what I mean, I would just be with it and trust in the process. And trusting our process is a choice. It's not something that happens of itself. It's really something we need to nourish, this ability. And it creates a better process. Now, even today, 16 years later, when my process has really taken me so far and I feel extremely blessed in my life and what I'm lucky enough to be doing in this life, and hopefully will do in the future even more, these things still happen. And it's really vital to understand that it's part of the process. Once in a while, something suddenly doesn't work, or there is a contraction, or you lose connection to something that was already always there and you really counted on it continuing to be there, or there's a big transformation that's going on and it requires to lose something, to give up something, to sacrifice something, or all sorts of difficult things can happen. And even today, I can suddenly say, is there anything wrong here? And of course, it's always worthwhile to check if there's anything wrong here. But usually, there's nothing wrong. The only problem might be that because we're suddenly disconnected from ourselves, as I was for a while in 2005 perhaps, or from source, from prime source, things like that, then it doesn't really mean that's the end of it. It just means relax, do your work, do your work, do your work. Maybe you need to rest a little bit. Maybe you need a time out. Maybe you need to have more fun. Maybe you need to read a book. Maybe you just really need to meditate. Whatever it is, it's part of the process. And just looking at it this way, as a warrior would, just helps you just birth yourself once again into the new you and into more healing. So thank you very much for being with me, whether in the present or in the future. And I'll see you next time. I don't quite know when exactly it's going to be, but I'll just say that I'm working on some very, very exciting projects. That's the main reason I wasn't here doing this series for a couple of months. I will soon let you know what's going on in the background right now. And good journey to all of us. Bye-bye.